What's the effect of CBD, cannabidiol, on COVID-19?
Hear his story, I think, is so important. It's tobacco. It's called Pirate's Den.
Well, hey, everybody. Welcome to the FLWPodcast. We are so excited to have another amazing leader on the show. My name is Cody DeGraff. I'm here with my co-host, Gabriel Klingman.
Hey, what's up, everyone? Just a quick reminder, we do this for you guys, so if you guys can just hit that subscribe button, it would mean the world to us.
Awesome. So today on the show, guys, we have an amazing dude. He is actually a dear friend of mine, and his name is Dr. Eric Mitchell. Now, for those of you who don't know him, he's a world-renowned surgeon. He's performed thousands of surgeries and operations on multiple people, including professional athletes, which is unbelievable. One of those being Kobe Bryant, I believe. And also, he is a former colonel in the United States Army, so I just appreciate your service to our country. That really means the world to us. He's also the president and founder of HCI, which we're going to get into a little bit. It's all about hemp oil and what's going on in this generation with that. And in addition to all that, he's also an author, and an amazing one at that. You can pick up his book on Amazon. It's called The Flow of Life and Keeping Your Dreams Alive, which I can't wait to talk a little bit more about that. And I believe he has you have another book coming out here pretty soon as well, Eric?
Yes, I do, and it's all done. And it's a compilation of some of the 720 daily blogs that I did for 2 consecutive years in a row.
Yeah, that's commitment.
Thank you so much for coming on the show. I want to start off kind of by asking you a question about this picture I have here. This is going back to your college years. I'm just curious, what is going on in this picture? Can you explain this a little bit to us?
Sure. That picture is from the United States versus Philadelphia basketball, the very first Liberty Bell Classic. And that was held in Philadelphia. And we took all the players in Philadelphia from the Big Five, and we matched up against the United States of America. And we had a number of All-Americans, as well as we had the number 1 draft choice in the United States of America. At that time, his name was Austin Carr. And he was, they still call him Mr. Cavalier. So we played, and I was the MVP. So
wow. That's amazing. Now, in addition to all this, obviously your book is phenomenal. I've actually read it a few years back when you handed it to me, and it's just unbelievable. And for those of you who don't know or have read this book, you can pick it up on Amazon. Now, can you kind of give us a little bit of a synopsis of the book?
Frank Fuqua was a basketball player, assistant coach that had gone to Maryland University. And after the first day of practice, he says, son, how would you like to be a competitive collegiate basketball player? And that was very, very, it didn't say whether you'd be good or bad, a competitive. And I said, yes. He says, are you willing to stay 30 minutes every day after practice? I said, yeah. So he says, okay. Now, I didn't hesitate, and he didn't hesitate. He spent every practice 30 minutes. And by the time I finished, he had my 6. A week later, he says, where do you live, son? I said, I live in Capitol Heights. He said, I live next town over. I had a limousine ride home every night thereafter, okay? It wasn't a limousine, but for me it was.
100%.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I didn't have to take this thumb and make it work, okay?
Exactly.
Yeah. So that was my basketball sojourn. And it was no different than, I talked with Dr. Bonavita. Dr. Bonavita Goldman is down in Florida, and he was ahead of me. He was the smartest guy I knew in my dorm. We had the best house, but they all helped me, especially when I was on the road for 4 or 5 days, playing games in Bowling Green, okay, in Indiana, and Louisiana.
Yeah.
And you get back to school, and everybody's had the chordate morphogenesis examination, and I have to go do a makeup. And so, we have to go up the hill to the biology lab, open up my cat, and go through every muscle and bone in the cat for me to pass this exam.
Wow.
And so they were my teachers, Dave Roboleski and Ed Ladarchek. They were all part of my success. You don't ever make it in this world on your own, okay? So I then got into the number 1 medical school in the country. So I dedicated my life and stayed there for the next 10 years. So that's what the book's about. The book's about my journey. We have little time on this world, and that's why we can't waste it. And that's why we, you know that very well, Gabriel. is that you can't waste that time. That time is precious, precious. If we hit one person through this podcast and make one person a difference, okay, I'll tell you a funny little story that I used to do. I used to visit schools and give them talks, and I would wear my white coat in. And I said, who am I? And these are 7th graders. They said, you're a doctor. I said, right. And I would take the white coat off, and I have my uniform, my colonel uniform on. I said, who am I now? I said, you're the colonel. You're a soldier. I said, right. And I'll take that off and have a basketball jersey on. I said, who am I now? They said, you're a basketball player. Then I take that off, just plain white shirt, undershirt. I said, who am I now? And they would be confused. I said, I'm just like you.
I'm totally using that, but that's amazing.
That is amazing.
That's unbelievable.
From hearing your story and hearing your progress and how the things you've overcome, it seems like I may be reading too much into this, but it seems like naturally you kind of lean towards a leadership role. And whether that's the official position or that's the leader within you, always coming out between a doctor, a colonel, even the story on how you progressed as a basketball player. Do you think that's more natural for you, or do you think that's something you've learned?
Well, I think we learn. These are attributes that we learn. Okay, I had a very strong father. Okay, that had self-respect. Okay, that had admiration for other people, and wanted that same respect from them. You have to understand that I grew up in a segregated society. When I started school, I went to segregated schools.
Wow.
Okay,
That's
and
crazy.
when I was making my first Holy Communion in the Catholic Church,
Yeah.
okay, they wanted my sister and I to walk in the back of the line.
Wow.
Okay, so, but my father wrote my mission of equality then. I outlined it in my book. He wrote my mission of equality because he wrote John Patrick A. O'Boyle was the Archbishop of Washington, D.C. and the surrounding suburbs. And he said, God created us all in his likeness and image.
Yeah.
And I expect you as the vicar of this diocese to make sure that my children take their respective place in line. And so we did.
Come on.
Okay?
Wow.
And despite that plaque on the last pew in the church that said colored, okay, guess where we sat every Sunday, Gabriel? Guess where we sat every Sunday?
You guys sat up front.
The very front row.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Okay,
That's amazing.
And so you understand that branded me right there. And we said, Daddy, why we gotta always sit way up front?
Come on.
And he says sometimes you have to overemphasize a point
Yeah.
to make a point.
Wow.
So
Now, with all that being said, the leader that you are is amazing, and I've had the privilege of sharing the stage with you, speaking at conferences, and I always got so excited whenever you came up and spoke because just the stuff that you talked about was just unbelievable, like we are right now. And, now being a leader, though, because that's what we talk about a lot on this podcast is leadership. What are some of the hardest things that you think you've been able to, or that you've had to experience with leadership?
I think leadership. I think you have to want to be there. You have to want to participate. You want to win, and Michael Jordan made everybody on his team a little better. That's what a leader really does.
Come on.
Okay,
That's good.
and so what can I do to make myself better and the team as a whole better? Leaders have to contribute. Leadership is not a title. Okay, it's a job. It's a job for you to participate, and you have to make. I've had 206 commands, not one, but 206 commands where I was designated as the leader. But what I was always the first one down to do the PT test. I was always the first one there. You have to lead by example, and that's what leadership is: leading by example, doing the things that people think that they're above oftentimes. Okay, so you have to. But leadership is not something that pops up. It's something that you have to work at.
So with that being said, what are some of your core values when it comes to leadership?
Keeping your word. That's really, a man is only as good as his word. And that's what my father, always professed. Too bad you all Cody talked earlier about someone having a dispute and, in a lawsuit. And, that's trying to go through a system, but the system should really start with the value of I gave you my word, and that should be enough, okay? But today we want contracts on top of contracts, indemnities on top of indemnities, all those things. So we've lost some of that in the morass.
Yeah.
Kind of, do you think like the leadership as a whole within the country is like, not individual leaders, but as a whole has slowly degraded?
Well, yeah, but it starts at the very top. Okay, when you have, I'm very, very disappointed as a retired colonel, and I still am a colonel. My behavior as a colonel needs to carry on no matter what I do.
Yeah, so now being in the medical field, being a doctor, you obviously are very diverse, and you understand just the important values of just the medicine that we use. And I want to talk a little bit about, what you've created. Obviously, you've created a Vitamin CBD. And can we just talk a little bit about your company and just everything that you're doing, and just hemp and hemp oil, and how revolutionary is this in our culture right now?
Let's start back with the whole story of Cannabis sativa L.
Yeah, sure.
This is the whole plant was Cannabis sativa L. Now there are two parts of that plant. One is called hemp, and the other one is called industrial cannabis. And industrial cannabis is when you have more than 0.3% by weight of THC. So they criminalized it. They vilified it, and then in 1970, President Nixon criminalized it.
Wow.
Through a presidential executive order, he made Cannabis sativa L, the whole plant, the whole species.
Wow.
Taking all the lemon trees and saying that you can't use them. Taking all the apple trees and forbidding people to use them because they could make alcohol or cider or things like that. So they took this plant, Cannabis sativa L, and made it a federal crime.
Wow.
Now, it has gone through and incarcerated millions and millions of people. Unfortunately, 85% of those are black and brown people.
Huh. Interesting.
Which is another fact. Until December the 20th of 2018, it was a federal crime. Now, the Farm Bill of 2018, when the president signed it, it made hemp a gang, less than 0.3, and then it made the medical cannabis, or quote unquote marijuana, still a federal crime. Now there are 33 states now that have medical programs that allow you to use medical cannabis as an alternative medical component. And we have 12 states now, plus Washington, D.C., that have legalized it, gone above the federal and gone to the sovereignty of each state. And they have passed. Last Friday, Maine started their cannabis program that was passed over 4 years ago.
Wow.
But Governor LePage says, not on my watch. And so he retarded that until now. And then I think it opened up on Friday, and they had some lines going around the block. Yeah. But I've been dealing with cannabis, with medical cannabis and hemp for the last 8 years. Yeah. I was giving out certificates because the Maine has had a program for alternative medicine for 21 years.
That's something.
Started in 1995 in California. Yeah. Dr. Mikaria, let's take our hats off to him. He was the first one through the door, and he got all the bullets and the arrows because he was fighting for a couple young men that had AIDS. Mm-hmm. And none of the commercial pharmaceutical components worked. And he knew that cannabis would work. Yeah. And he got the first Proposition 215 passed in California in 1996. Oregon followed in 1997. The state of Washington followed in 1998. Alaska and Maine followed in 1999. So Maine has had an alternative medical program since 1999. Now, so when I finished my surgical career, or doing my surgical career of 28,000 surgeries, what was important is that I always had respect for the narcotics, and only gave 5 days of narcotics. After that, we would find something else. Mm-hmm. Now, when they created Oxycontin and hydrocodone and other narcotics and the barbiturates, it got so out of hand that we were losing 50 to 100,000 people, 50 to 70,000 people a year for death, because of the opioid epidemic.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
when I finished my surgical career, I actually gave up my DEA license, the Drug Enforcement Agency. I gave my license up. And I went and started giving certificates for people to use to get off of the narcotics.
My mom she had a whole bunch of surgeries, and she got the doctors gave her a bunch of narcotics. She was addicted to Vicodin for years.
Yes.
And she transitioned off from that to literally to marijuana, and like made a transition, took away the pain, and it just completely changed her life.
That's what I did. That's what I did, for 5 years consecutively before I went into and realizing that there was still a big stigma for medical cannabis that we call marijuana. But I was able to get people off of Percocet and Vicodin and Valium and all of these things by virtue of giving them a card. When you have a Schedule I drug, you cannot prescribe it.
Wow. Yeah.
It was only a certificate
Yeah.
of authorization that you had tried the conventional pharmaceuticals and they weren't working. So you could go to an alternative program. And so that's what I did.
Now you have some products over here that you've actually created yourself. Can you share a little bit about those products?
Okay, let me tell you first and foremost, I had to learn what the products were. I had to understand. I understand that CBD, cannabidiol, was bigger than THC. So
Yes.
my first cousin and I, we formulated a company called Hemp Commodities Industries.
Yeah.
Okay, and we wanted to take the hemp plant and renaissance it, put it back into the fields. So what we did is we went and farmed. I went from orthopedic surgeon to farmer. And there's a YouTube, okay, roll your own, where you can see me in the field planting, growing, harvesting, okay, and bucking, and all the steps I wanted to go, because I never learned how to do a total hip arthroplasty or total hip replacement by reading a book. I had to go through the process multiple times.
Do it. Yeah.
Yeah, so I did it. So I was committed to do it, and it took about 17 hours a day, for 120 plus days in order to get that done. But what has come out of it was the fact that we created a whole line of products to help to address what's known as the endocannabinoid system. Now, I got to explain this to you.
Sure.
That the endocannabinoid system was first discovered in 1992. 1992, Dr. Raphael Mashula and a bunch of researchers at NIH described the endocannabinoid system. It's just like your digestive system, your neurological system, okay, your respiratory system, all of these different systems. And this was another one that they didn't teach me in medical school because I was already 18 years out of medical school, okay? But there was a moratorium as a federal crime, so it wasn't taught in medical schools at all.
Interesting.
Even as of 2018, 87% of allopathic medical school, MD medical schools, and DO medical schools did not teach about the endocannabinoid system. Why would you teach something that's illegal?
Huh.
So we didn't have a collective knowledge. So I'm convinced that people are in cannabinoid deprivation. Now we make two cannabinoids in our body, anandamide and 2-AG. Now 2-AG is a shortened for some long word, but 2-AG and anandamide are made in our body. So what? We still make a little bit of vitamin D with the sun hitting our skin, but we still have to supplement it because we wear clothes now and we don't get enough sunlight.
Right.
So we have to use a supplement. And this is where I'm going. And I believe that all of the cannabinoids that are now THC, CBD, CBC, CBG, CBN are all cannabinoids that work on this autoregulatory neurotransmitter system. Okay? It's bigger than you ever could think it to be, but very, 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 very important. So what we did is after we farmed the hemp and made it into biomass, I started formulating products in order to get that into people's system. Now, cannabis sativa L works on the endocannabinoid system, and we have what's known as CB1 receptors and CB2 receptors in different parts of our body. CB2 receptors in the bone are bone stimulating.
Interesting.
I went down and I met with a Dr. Rosen at Maine Medical Center Research Institute in Scarborough.
Yeah.
We have a project going to prove that because don't forget, we've been under prohibition. We've been under criminalization. So the research from 1970 up until December of 2018 has been banished, has been, I mean, there's even Supreme Court situations where people have tried to study this plant that's been around for 8,000 years.
Right.
And they have not been able to study it. Only one institution under the Criminalization Act was allowed to grow hemp or cannabis.
Yeah.
And that was the University of Mississippi. They had a cannabis plantation and the research only at the University of Mississippi. Now, research is tumbling out of every orifice going today because we're looking at it even of what's the effect of CBD, cannabidiol, on COVID-19.
Yeah.
The Israelis are using inhalational CBD right now to treat COVID-19 because this endocannabinoid system has the ability to regulate the amount of autoimmune charges. Now, when I say that, the body has an immune system.
Yeah.
Our immune system has T cells, it has B cells, it has macrophages, it has monocytes, it has lymphocytes, and all these things work to protect our body.
Yeah.
And what we're finding right now is that most of the diseases that we're talking about, let's talk about obesity. It's a low-grade chronic inflammation. Let's talk about diabetes. It's a low-grade chronic inflammation. Let's talk about dementia. It's a low-grade chronic inflammation.
Interesting.
Okay? And now, if you have a fire department and all your firemen are out of the firehouse treating low-grade smoldering fires, you could lose the firehouse. Okay? And yet, this is something that we really have to understand, that our immune system is not working. And AARP has a 5-part series right now, AARP, on our 50-year-old immune system.
Wow.
Because we have taken in so many more insecticides and pesticides and just all the air that we breathe that we challenge our immune system every day. And so this system comes, and COVID-19 comes along. It basically attacks our system. We can't respond to it until we call out the stormtroopers. And the stormtroopers are called cytokines. And these cytokines is like calling the fire department. Your neighbor calls the fire department because they see some smoke coming out your kitchen window.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You have a pan fire that you can put out with a little baking soda or what. But the fire department arrive, they drive up on your front yard, they break down your front door, and they have all the hoses, and they do $10,000 on that $10 frying pan.
Yeah.
That's what cytokines do. They get into our lung, and they tear the lung apart. And that's why so many respirators are being used for COVID-19. It's a late response. It's a late response of our immune system, not to give up on us, but to try to help us and at the same time do a certain amount of damage.
Coming from, a doctor's perspective, how concerned should we be about everything that's going on with COVID-19 right now? I mean, do you have any specific advice that you could give us on that?
Yeah, don't get it.
That's
Amen.
That's pretty good advice right there.
And that's basically talking about well here's what they know. Now remdesivir was supposed to help. And now the World Health Organization has done a study and said remdesivir is not changing any of the outcomes. Okay, the steroids are certainly helping, but steroids have a lot of side effects. And I want to bring the conversation back to what can we do right now.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
My credo for every night that I do a podcast, every night I do a video podcast on Facebook, and I said, have you had your daily vitamin CBD to help reduce the chronic inflammation in your body to help support your immune system.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Come on.
That's the essence. And what I to start developing it, and I found out that CBDA, which is the acid form of CBD, 'cause you can go to the gas station now and buy CBD, okay? Because hemp seed oil is from the fertilization of the female plant that makes a seed. CBD is a resin that comes out of the female plant that cannot be fertilized.
Wow.
Okay? Now let me say that again, because if we're going to make 1 or 2 points, hemp seed, if the hemp plant is fertilized, it makes seeds with the female.
Okay. Yep.
And you can press those and get hemp seed oil. Now, hemp seed oil is nothing new. Okay? In 1941, Henry Ford, remember that guy?
Oh yeah, of course.
He made an all hemp car.
Interesting.
And guess what it ran on? I already gave you the answer.
It's got to be hemp.
Yeah,
Or
CBD
hemp
oil.
oil.
But right, hemp seed oil,
Yeah.
the biofuel. Right. That's 1941.
That's amazing.
Okay? So that's the revelation that we have to get. We have to pick up.
Yeah.
Okay? Now, today, 17% of Mercedes and BMWs are made of hemp.
What? Okay, explain that. What do you mean they're made
All
of hemp?
all of the door panels
Yeah.
are no longer plastic or steel.
Yeah.
They're hemp because hemp is twice as strong as steel and 20% lighter.
What? That's amazing.
This is
Oh, yeah.
mind blowing.
Well, it's about educating. It's about learning the essence, because so much of this is covered up.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, they're even all hemp planes now. Okay, now hemp. Don't forget, we could not grow hemp in this country for 50 years.
Yeah.
Okay, all of our hemp for our thread came out of Australia.
Yeah.
Okay, and now when 1937, when they put this tax on marijuana, we got into a war in 1941-42. They lifted the ban on hemp in 1943. You know why? We were making ships to go out to sea, but once you go into the dock, what do you need? Something called rope. And we didn't have any hemp to grow rope because we imported all of our hemp from the Philippines. And in 1943, my father was in the Philippines fighting the Japanese.
Wow.
So they lifted, they put up victory, the victory signs, be American, grow hemp. And they subsidized it, and they put the tax back on the hemp back in 1945 once we had enough rope.
This is crazy.
Right. You are doing an amazing job at education. And clearly, Cody and I are learning so much through this, as well as everyone listening to this podcast, I'm sure.
Jeez, I'm crazy.
Well, that's where we have to lift. We got to lift all boats. Okay, we
Yeah,
got
of
to.
course.
Yeah,
Absolutely appreciate that. And with that, and also to kind of take it in a slightly different angle, the idea of lifting all boats. Earlier in this podcast, you had mentioned that some of the attributes for you, like your core values for leadership, was being honest, being truthful, keeping your word, right?
Yes.
What are some of the others, or are there others that you believe are diehard, absolutely make or break qualities of a good leader?
I put down, and I write in the book, dedication and determination. And I call it Mitchell's double D, and it's not a hamburger. Okay? And that double D is dedication. You have to dedicate yourself to it. You have to be a student of it. Okay? And what George Zelicki, who is one of the premier, modern day multi-level marketing guys, he's done all kind of leadership situations, say that you have to master. You have to get mastery.
Yeah.
And that when you start something out from the beginning, you're dipping and you're dabbing. You're not.
Yeah.
But what I've done is immersed myself. Okay, so a leader immerses his or herself into the subject matter so that they can speak with impunity. Okay, not supposition, not hyperbole, but with supposition.
Yeah.
And so that's the first thing I had to do. What I did, I went through every step of farming this, from growing the seeds to the seedlings, to planting it, to harvesting it, to bucking it, okay, to distillation of it. So that I believe it makes me better. It makes HCI, the company, better, okay? And determination, you'd be surprised how many obstacles that we've had put in front of us. Okay,
I can imagine.
Oh,
Yeah.
multiple obstacles, and every day. And I know there's going to be some more. Okay, but that's not going to deter you from your mission, because you have to have all in. And Cody, you probably heard me talk about this: mind, heart, and gut. Those things have to be in sync. If the mind's thinking it and it ain't in your heart, it ain't going to happen. Your gut is your reptilian brain. When you feel it in your gut and don't pay attention to it, you're gonna suffer the consequences thereof.
Yeah.
So it's mind, heart, and gut, and all of them have to be in sync. And if you do that, then you're all in. And that's one of the articles that in my book about being all in.
That's amazing. And I just want to remind everybody that's watching this podcast or listening to this podcast to pick up The Flow of Life, pick up the Eric's book. It's unbelievable. Absolutely. I feel like right now we're getting a sample of all the golden stuff that's from that book. And I want to kind of dive into it regarding personal development. Other than your book, obviously, do you obviously you work on personal development for yourself. Is there any books that you'd recommend to our audience right now outside of your own?
Well, in my phone, I have 540 bbooks that I have read.
I thought I had a lot. Wow.
Yeah, I mean, they tell me there's 540, and I'm a dyslexic, so I don't read, I listen. Okay, and so in my 18 sojourn running up and down the East Coast, I could chew up a book, 2 or 3 books a week. Wow. And there's some great There's some great books. But here's 2 of them. I'll give you 2.
Sure.
It's called Willful Blindness.
Yep.
Now think about that. Willful blindness. That's number 1.
That's interesting.
And the other one, I read all of Malcolm Gladwell's book. Okay, What the Dog Saw, Blink. Okay, the other one is Predictably Irrational.
I've read that one.
Yeah.
Very, very good book.
Yeah, we tend to be predictably irrational. Okay, even when we know the answer. Okay, another one is called The Black Swan.
I've heard of that one.
I have heard of that one.
Yeah.
You have to read it, because we're in the middle of a black swan right now. Okay?
Interesting.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Okay. So, I can go on for hours.
Oh, I
and
believe
days.
it. Yeah. No, let's talk about. Okay, let's dive into your products. I want to learn more about these products that you have here.
Okay. So what we did is my research and development. As I said, I have a fellowship in research, so I understand that you have to do things, and it has to be reproducible.
Yeah.
I mean, you do it one time, and you can't say hurrah. You have to reproduce it over and over and over again, so you can take a hypothesis and it becomes theory once you can do it and other people can do it and get the same results. Okay, so and they claim Edison failed 1,000 times before he got the light bulb.
Right.
He says, I didn't fail at all. He says, I just found 1,000 ways it didn't work.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's how you approach this.
Yep.
So what I have here is I have what's known as 2-path. Okay. Now the first thing I did is I said this is an essential substance, so let's make it a vitamin.
Yeah.
Now I had the audacity, that I have, and to name it as a vitamin, and I believe it is a vitamin and I did it on the first day that they signed, the same day they signed the bill. So I don't think anybody's ahead of me. Okay, but before that, August the 20th of 2018, it was a federal crime.
Yeah.
On December the 18th, on December 20th of 2018, it became legal again. So I named it as a vitamin of the endocannabinoid system. Okay, and I trademarked it. This is another rendition thereof. It's called 2-path. And it deals with CBD, cannabidiol, and the acid form, which is known as CBDA. Yeah. Now, if you go back 3 years, CBD was the big rage. The big rage now is CBDA. What will be the big rage tomorrow? The big rage tomorrow is probably going to be CBG.
Interesting.
CBG is the precursor for all the other 140 cannabinoids. CBG is the precursor for all the other. It makes your THCA, your CBDA, your CBCA, so forth and so on. Those are the top three. Those are the top three that are known most, because don't forget, we've been in prohibition. We haven't been able to
recently, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
right until recently. Yes. So CBG, I got some organic biomass coming right now that's supposed to be high in CBG, and I'm going to see what I can do with it on my workbench. I have a laboratory that I go into and I work and I do combinations, and that's where when I created Two Path, and Two Path is equal part CBD or greater portion of CBDA. Wow. Now,
that's amazing.
It's because we have two physiological pathways to reducing inflammation. The CBDA works through what's known as the cyclooxidase pathway. Okay, not so important as long as if you ever taken Motrin or Indocin or Aleve, that's the chemical pathway that they use. Now, what we have is we have a botanical. You know the difference between a pharmaceutical and a botanical? They make it up. They make the chemistry up, okay?
Of course.
They put some carbon and hydrogen and nitrogen, and they make up the compound. Botanical is a natural, Mother Nature made that up, okay? So we're taking Mother Nature's juice and giving it to our bodies.
Which makes sense. I mean, doesn't that seem to make sense that we would actually have something that was designed for us to be coexisting with, rather than creating something not necessarily designed for that?
That's right. Well said, Cody. That's exactly my point. Is let's look at the normal. We have the cannabinoids in our body. We make two of them. Yeah. They're called endogenous. That means we make them, and that's anandamide and 2-AG. Okay. Here we have this from a plant standpoint that has been ostracized, vilified, and criminalized for the last 70 years. So
that's crazy.
I want you to be crazy. Okay?
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That sounds like a conspiracy. Like,
if it wasn't real, it would make a great show.
I'm sure
if
there's
it wasn't
100
so real.
conspiracies out of that whole idea.
I'm sure as well. Okay.
Not to get into all that.
Yeah. But anyway, let's look at one of my other products, but it's taking advantage of a pharmaceutical process known as nano-emulsification. Does that leave you weak? Nano. What's nano? Nano means small.
Yep.
And when you can take something from 100 microns to 5 microns, okay, you have the bioavailability and the bioabsorption increases by a exponential.
Yeah.
Increases 4-fold, 5-fold. Wow. Okay? And that's what we have here. And they're good and they're yummy. Okay? This is the Wild Maine Blueberry Nano Emulsified Gummies.
Oh, that's awesome.
Okay? And the reason that this is the hot ticket today is because we are taking 20 milligrams and getting 20%. That's 4 milligrams that you normally would get. Here, the bioavailability is 80%. So you're getting 80% of 20, and that's 16.
Wow.
Okay, so we normally just get 20% bioavailability. But here, the pharmaceutical world, okay, now this is still all natural, this is still all botanical, but we use, ultrasonic components to mix oil and water together, so to speak. Now, if we go to the restaurant and we get some, vinegar, oil and vinegar.
Yep.
And the oil and vinegar, if you shake it up, that's known as an emulsification. Have you ever taken Pepto-Bismol? Pepto-Bismol is an anti-diarrhea medicine, and what it says on the bottle, be sure to shake before you use, because you have to shake it and make it to make it an emulsion. Now, this emulsion with ultrasonic components pushes everything with a thing called surfactant into small little bubbles that can stay in suspension for up to a year.
Wow.
And we're using that technology for our gummies in order to increase the absorption. Tell you a little story. I have something that you have to understand. It's called a pet treat, because all mammals have the endocannabinoid system.
Yeah, yeah.
And the dog that wants to hide underneath the couch when the lightning goes off or noise or sirens, this is it.
Wow.
Really?
This helps to control their anxiety. The same thing that we're doing with this is controlling our anxiety. The same thing that we do with 2-Path is we're controlling our anxiety.
Wow.
I had a white paper done and ready to go to the VA. As a retired colonel, post-traumatic stress
Yeah.
and the suicide rate in the military is 120% over the normal public.
No way.
Yes.
I did not know that statistic.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's crazy.
It's embarrassing.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I had a white paper to try to, I wanted to do a clinical trial. Now, clinical trials are $1 to $2 million. Okay? I didn't have that right then and there. And I was hoping that the VA would come in and help me do 10,000 soldiers and show that this is statistically significant and it has the value proposition of reducing suicides.
Yeah. Yeah.
But COVID came in. On March the 15th, the white paper was due. I was ready to put it up because I'm a go-getter.
Oh.
And
I know.
and I went to get it, and COVID came in. I said, doggone it, I lost 1.5 million veterans and soldiers and reservists.
Wow.
But you know what I gained? I gained 330 million people, better known as the United States of America.
Yeah, the entire U.S.
Yes, that's right.
exactly. Yeah.
And do you understand that depression has tripled in the United States of America from 8.6% to 27.6%
Wow.
in the last 9 months?
Man.
Okay?
That's a really hard.
And you want to see an antidepressant? Antidepressant is right here.
That's it.
Okay? You want to see an anti-anxiety product for our man's best friend?
That's
Here,
it right there.
That's it right here. So this is where I've poured science into this, and I believe the hemp commodities industry can top any other company because it's physician driven.
Right.
It's not Wall Street investors driven. It's
that
physician
makes
driven.
such a big difference.
Which makes sense. Not just difference, like sense, right?
Well,
I don't want Wall Street driven.
Yeah.
Physician driven makes a lot more sense to me.
I just started my 50th year in medicine.
Yeah.
Okay,
Wow.
and so that's my goal, my aim, and my ambition, and that's why we can go to Daily Vitamin CBD, and all 13 of our SKUs are on there. You can order online.
So we have only a couple more questions, and this
Go.
is one of the questions that we ask towards the end of every one of our
I mean, we
interviews.
could have 100 more. if we
I know
wanted
at this
to, but-
point, honestly. And if you were on your deathbed, we're gonna picture this for a minute. Okay?
Okay.
You're on your deathbed, and you have some of the closest people around you. What is the one piece of advice that you're gonna leave them with? Could be anything, completely out of left field. What's the one thing you're gonna leave them with?
Do what drives you, and you will never work a day in your life.
Come on.
Do what drives you.
Do you mind if I ask what drives you?
How lucky I've been. Okay, that's what drives me. I mean, I don't have any obligations, major obligations that I have to. I raise my children. All our children are just doing fine because of the impetus and inference. In that book that you'll read, I put all my father's quotes in, and I modeled it after the poem "If" by Rudyard Kipling. Are you familiar with it?
I'm not familiar with that poem. No.
Rudyard Kipling wrote a poem. It's 5 stanzas. And let me just give you the first stanza. If you can keep your head when all about you are losing theirs and yet blame it on you. If you can trust yourself when all men doubt you, but make allowances for their doubting too. If you can be lied about and not deal in lies. If you can be hated and not deal in hate. And yet not look too good nor talk too wise. That's all you got to pay me for the rest.
I was like, I was feeling that really strong.
I was taken in.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I mean it has a couple other lines that I like to if you can dream and not make dreams your master, if you can think and not make thoughts your aim,
Yeah.
if you can take triumph and disaster and treat those two imposters just the same,
Wow.
then you're a man, my son. That's the last line in the poem. Okay, there's more to the poem. There's three more verses that we won't bore you with today.
Who's this author one more time?
Rudyard Kipling.
Okay.
Yeah, If by Rudyard Kipling. Okay,
that's awesome. I'm definitely going to look into that. So, well, Doc, I mean, we are unfortunately running out of time here, but I just wanted to ask you one more question.
Okay, all right.
What's next, brother? I mean, what do you got next going on?
Next is to pass this on to a sustainable, exponential operation. Okay, I just can't keep on doing this in the lab. I have to be able to make sure that it's theory and that other people can do it. Okay, that's where we're going next. Is try to educate the people. My job is to be behind this mic, teaching people. Okay, so I've taken time coming out of the lab today, but that's okay because we have a bigger mission. Okay, because I only can make so many bottles for so many people, but we have major organizations, so that's where we're going, and I want people to ask that proverbial question: have you had your daily vitamin CBD to help reduce your inflammation to support your immune system?
What an honor it has been for us
Such
to be
an
a
honor.
part of this journey with you, to be a part of this education process. I personally will never forget this. This has been extremely helpful for me. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Okay.